yesterday's news.
Hello and welcome to Old News, the programme and podcast which looks at news of the day through the papers of yesterday. Well, of course, it might be old news, but it's almost a new year. So I thought we might look back 128 years ago to the Isle of Man Times. Saturday, June the 4th, 1896, when there was a lengthy piece detailing the New Year's celebrations and thoughts and aspirations on the Isle of Man for the coming year. Just entitled New Year. It starts, the New Year had here, as elsewhere in Christendom, the old-fashioned reception which, amongst its other recommendations, has the charm of variety. There were watch night services in most of the places of worship for those who wished to give due solemnity to their farewell to the departing and their welcome to the coming year. There were social fireside gatherings of those who wished to part with the old and to meet the new year side by side with their nearest and dearest friends. While through the streets and to our doors came glee choirs and hands and bands of music proclaiming with joyous melody the dawn of the new year. New Year's Day, as Thursday also, was kept as a general holiday, all the shops, with very few exceptions, being closed. There were some open then, maybe it was the garage. Amongst the public places of amusement open on New Year's Day were the Grand Theatre, where there were both an afternoon and evening performance, and the Palace, at which there was the annual dog and poultry show, which, as usual, attracted a considerable crowd of visitors, just the way to start the new year. But there was also one essential element to the thorough enjoyment of a holiday lacking both on New Year's Day and Thursday: fine weather. Good to see some things never change. The weather here, as our readers know only too well, was depressingly damp and gloomy. Ringing any bells? For which none of us will find any consolation in learning from the Liverpool papers that in that city, not remarkable by the way for the dryness of its atmosphere, the weather on New Year's Day was bright and pleasant, and the temperature considerably higher than for some time past. However, though the weather did not in this instance lend itself to a cheerful view of things, the fact that hope springs eternal in the human breast is never more manifest than at the beginning of a new year. And it is well that it should be so, for the year is all more likely to prove a happy new year if we commence it in a hopeful spirit, even though the prospect may not be without a touch of gloom. And if we take a wider view than our immediate surroundings, that is, than our local surroundings, we shall find that the prospect which the new year opens up is not without cause for anxiety. Some things never change. All the inflammable elements in international politics, which must have given Lord Salisbury as our Foreign Secretary some bad quarters of an hour of late, seem to be disappearing at the close of the year. But on New Year's Day, another bolt from the blue fell more acutely endangering the peaceful relations of our empire with other great powers than even did President Cleveland's chauvinist message to the American Senate. This bolt from the blue was in the form of a telegraphic announcement from South Africa that Dr. Jameson, a well-known officer of the British South African Company, had marched into the territory of the Transvaal Republic with 800 men and 6 Maxim and other guns, and was on his way to Johannesburg. Those who took in its full meaning this announcement opened up a prospect of the empire of which this island forms a part being involved in very dangerous complications with foreign powers. If it meant that the long-threatened civil, or rather racial war between the European settlers in South Africa was imminent, it would have been serious enough, but this sudden inroad of the military force of a British chartered company into the territory of the Transvaal Republic threatened to involve us in a war with the Boers of South Africa, backed with all the fighting power of Germany and probably France. Happily, Mr. Chamberlain, as the colonial minister, has proved himself equal to the emergency and has taken steps which, even if Dr. Jameson's action precipitates a civil war in the Transvaal, will leave no excuse for the direct interference of Germany and France. Change some of the names, but the actual thoughts stay very similar now, don't they, to 120 8 years ago. It goes on quite a bit about other parts of the world and the Transvaal, but then skips to matters closer to home. It is a far cry from the Transvaal to the Isle of Man, but turning from our foreign and colonial relations in order to look at our prospects for the coming year from a point with which we are in immediate touch. It may confidently be said that Douglas, with the new year, enters upon much that will become welcome in its physical development, connecting its promenades and thus completing a seaside walk without a rival in the kingdom, crossing the harbour with a bridge which promises to be not less convenient than a specimen of engineering skill. The continued demolition of Old Douglas with its fever and disease germ traps and the erection of modern buildings and healthy dwellings. The provision of roomy tramcars to the upper parts of the town, affording facilities for reaching residences by visitors who otherwise would be denuded of their desired company. A novelty will probably come into existence to enable visitors, by the aid of electricity, to survey the wondrous contorted rocks which border the land from Douglas Head to Port Sodrick. It is probable, owing to a success of the electric railway to Laxey, that a commencement will be made of a continuation to Ramsey, which is on the eve of the prosperity to long looked for and so well deserved. In the general awakening which is going on all over the island, and the interest in its existence and its many unique charms drawing visitors from all parts of the kingdom, a successful year may fairly be anticipated, not only for Douglas, but for the whole island. It goes on, the advent of a new Lieutenant Governor is for the inhabitants an incident of immense importance. It means either dull uniformity in the conducting of public business or a vigorous interest in the affairs of the island. It will be no slight task for any governor to equal the acceptable services of Sir Joseph West Ridgway, who not only performed incumbent public duties with exceptional ability, but commended himself to the goodwill of the inhabitants by a personal interest in all that concerned the prosperity of the island. I think we could say the same of the current governor, could we not? His successor will deserve the affection and regard of the dwellers in Manxland if he becomes an imitator of the late governor, and will certainly, with the inhabitants, pass a happy new year. And then it goes on to list services in a lot of the churches around the Isle of Man. At St George's Church, we're told the usual services on New Year's Eve were held at St George's. There was a very fair congregation, especially when the inclement weather is to be considered. The service was commenced at 10:30 by the singing of a hymn, O God our help in ages past, and the prayers were said by the vicar, who also read the special lessons. New Year's Eve at St Matthew's, the weather was distinctly depressing and uninviting for those desiring to spend the last hour of the expiring year in the house of God. Nevertheless, this church was well filled, and the collection, which was for the town nurses' fund, almost doubled what it has ever been before. The vicar preached from In the Lord I put my trust. The congregation was most reverent, and the worship most hearty. The Salvationists of Peel had a monster gathering, we're told, on New Year's Day at their annual tea party. Contingents from Ramsey and Douglas encouraged the Peel brethren, who are nobly labouring in their struggling cause by their presence, and the Douglas band added interest to the occasion. And we're told the following ladies presided at the tea tables: Mrs Watterson, Mrs Kane, Miss Crageen, Miss Clark, Miss Cubban, Miss Christian, Miss Lawson, and Miss Vick, doing sterling duty. Lamfell Wesleyan Sunday School, the annual concert and tea in connection with the Lamfell Sunday School, just down the road from me at Croncafondy, it has to be said, no longer there per se, were held on New Year's Day in a large barn kindly lent by Mr Christian, and which was tastefully decorated with evergreen roses and ribbons of every colour, rendering it very attractive and reflecting great. Although the night was rather wet, the festival was a decided success, for the barn was full to the door, as usual. A solo by Miss M. J. Cowell, Peace, Perfect Peace, was given in excellent style, and the choir gave some splendid music under the able conductorship of Mr. S.B. Kelly, schoolmaster. Miss Cathy Christian presided at the harmonium and acquitted herself splendidly. And votes of thanks were given to all those who assisted in making the meeting a success, the concert being the best ever given at this tea meeting. Sounds good, doesn't it? We'll have to see if it still goes on. I'm afraid the answer is no, it doesn't. And finally, if you didn't want to see the new year in with a bang, the Manx Union for the Promotion of Temperance. Amongst the New Year's Day gatherings in Douglas was the annual meeting of the friends and subscribers of the Manx Union for the Promotion of Temperance. Not much seen these days, I fear, which was held, of course, in the Coffee Palace in Market Place. There was, we are told, a good attendance. Not as many, perhaps, as at the Lamfell Wesleyan Sunday School. A little of how New Year was seen in the Isle of Man 128 years ago. I wish you health, some wealth perhaps, prosperity, the greatest being health maybe, in 2025. And I will see you in that year for more old news. Cheerio.
You're gonna be yesterday's news.